Good morning. My name is Reverend Vaughan Amaré, and I welcome you to Northern Light Spiritual Center, a community of people dedicated to using spiritual and practical principles to create lives we want to live. Northern Light Spiritual Center offers practical and spiritual tools to make positive changes in our lives. We at Northern Light Spiritual Center acknowledge our presence here on the traditional and unceded ancestral lands of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish and Salish peoples. These people are still here, and we join with them in how they continue to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. We seek to resist the erasure of Indigenous histories as we work towards honoring and inviting the truth. Please join me for our opening song, In This Very Room, by Ron and Carol Harris. In this very room, there's quite enough love for all the world. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all the world. And there's quite enough peace and quite enough power to walk through our every fear. For Spirit, sweet Spirit, is in this very room. In this very room. And I'd also like to say hello to Victoria, who's just joined us on Zoom. So thank you, Victoria. Aren't you doing the reading and meditation?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what they do.
Okay.
But, Good morning. Today's meditation is we're going to repeat a mantra. So I'm just going to invite everybody to relax in their seat or wherever they happen to be, to allow yourself to get as comfortable as you possibly can, finding that sweet spot. And just allow yourself to release any worries and woes, frustrations, and the whatnots that have come before this present moment. And let us just take a few nice deep breaths in, and you can be audible about it when you're releasing it. So let us breathe in and release. One more time in and release. And one more time in and release. For those of you on Zoom, you can see the mantra that we're going to repeat. And so if you'd like to join along with me or say it to yourself, that's okay. Divine presence is always closer to me than my very breath. Joyfully, I anticipate greater good, more success, and deeper peace. Divine presence is always closer to me than my very breath. Joyful, I anticipate greater good, more success, and deeper peace. Divine presence is closer to me than my very breath. Joyfully, I anticipate greater good, more success, and deeper peace. Divine presence is always closer to me than my very breath. Joyfully, I anticipate greater good, more success, and deeper peace. One more time. Divine presence is always closer to me than my very breath. Joyfully, I anticipate greater good, more success, and deeper peace. Just allow that to sink in. Knowing that at any time, any moment in our day, no matter what's going on, we can joyfully anticipate greater good, more success, and a deeper peace. All we need to do is put our mind to it. And so when you're ready, you can open your eyes, if you're present, and return to the room. And so it is. Plus I have to stop that. Okay, our reading for today comes from this one,
Yes.
July's Science of Mind magazine. And this part of the reading is from an article called See Yourself as You Want to Be. And that's from an unpublished work of Ernest Holmes. Think of yourself as you would like to be, and calmly state that you are now in the position that you care to be in. That you are now doing the things you would like to be doing. That you now possess the things you want to possess. Look at your picture as you would view a landscape, mentally dwelling on this picture, trying to feel the reality of it until you can sense that it is reality. Then leave the entire picture for the law to work out for you, returning to your everyday affairs with perfect confidence that something is taking place on this invisible side of your life, and that you will experience in outward form all your inner aspirations. Let go of everything. Clear your thought of every impression. Do not will or wish anything. In the silence of your own thought, feel that you are surrounded by an infinite spirit, that there is an influx from this spirit flowing through you. Let the mind of this spirit be your mind and say, Infinite Spirit within me, which is God, all-knowing, all-wise, all-perfect one. There is no life apart from you, and you are that which I am. I am whole because you are whole. I am perfect because you are perfect. I know because you know. I am because you are. My word is the law unto itself, through the one great law of perfect liberty and perfect action. The second part of the reading is an article by Reverend Dr. David Alexander. He's a senior minister at CSL in Atlanta. And this is called, What Kind of Life Wants You? I grew up in this teaching, and when I watch people learn about science of mind, they often marvel at how different their own lives might have been if they had access to this philosophy at a younger age. I often tell them that while it did not inoculate me from life's challenges, it did equip me with the tools to address those challenges. One of the greatest tools for me has been the power of visualization and the spiritual practice of visioning. We all come into this world with varying conditions and circumstances that, based on social standards and judgments, begin to form a picture of what may or may not seem possible for our life experience. We also come equipped with a paintbrush to create our own image of what is possible. While I did not have many social barriers to success, what I lacked was an inner confidence and vision of what was possible for my life. Without that, not much else mattered. I was my own barrier to happiness and success. Once I learned that my mind was an open playground of possibilities, that I was free to fashion from my heart's desires, I realized I possessed the single most important tool of creation, the power of my mind. It did not matter if I had the resources or not. I first needed the capacity to see. Ultimately, spiritual living is about embodying the qualities of spirit we wish to express. But embodiment is impossible without first seeing. Therefore, our primary task is to cultivate the capacity to see, feel, and imagine what our life would be like if we were writing the script, because we are. At first, you may not practice this tool of visualizing the life you want. Over time, at first you may just practice this tool of visualizing the life you want. Over time, however, you may come to realize, as I did, that the power you are co-creating with is a field of potentiality bigger than your imagination. Once the magnitude of this potential dawns on your consciousness, the question begins to shift from what kind of life you want to live, to the kind of life, shift from what kind of life you want to what kind of life wants you. That, my friends, is when the real fun begins. And so it is.
So each month I develop a chant for the month, reflecting on some of the themes that are going on. So the theme for this month is about our visions pulling us forward. So the words to this chant are: my vision is pulling me forward, my vision is pulling me toward a world that works for everyone, every day, and every way. And that repeats. Once we get through that first verse, that first version, then we go to saying it as your vision. And we go through that. And then the third verse is our vision. And then we come back at the end to my vision. My vision is pulling me forward. My vision is pulling me toward world that works for everyone, every day and every way. My vision is pulling me forward. My vision is pulling me toward a world that works for everyone, every day and every way. Every day and every way. Now your vision. Your vision is pulling you forward. Your vision is pulling you toward a world that works for everyone, every day and every way. Your vision is pulling you forward. Your vision is pulling you towards a world that works for everyone, every day and every way. Every day and every way. Now it's our vision. Our vision is pulling us forward. Our vision is pulling us toward a world that works for everyone, every day and every way. Our vision is pulling us forward. Our vision is pulling us toward a world that works for everyone, every day and every way. Every day and every way. Now back to my vision is pulling me forward. My vision is pulling me toward a world that works for everyone, every day and every way. My vision is pulling me toward. My vision is pulling me toward a world that works for everyone, every day and every way. Every day and every way. Thank you. Thank you for joining, Victoria. And I heard Reba here, so thank you. Usually we do a presentation song from YouTube, or if we have a guest musician, they do the song before the talk. Based on the title of today's talk is Stay and Staying. That comes from the African American spiritual. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus, was how it was originally composed. With our tradition, we step away from Jesus as the only way that truth and goodness and kindness can be expressed, and we lean more into His Spirit and a little bit try to expand to be a little bit more inclusive. So the words to this are pretty simple, and Michael will have them up on the screen to see it. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Spirit. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Spirit. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Spirit. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. So, it's pretty easy to do once you pick up the melody. And I am lifting the chords because the original chords are not things that I can sing to. So, you're all stuck with my vocal range, and I apologize that that's kind of where we are. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on the Spirit. Well, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on the Spirit. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on the Spirit. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Now walking and talking. I'm walking and talking with my mind stayed on the Spirit. Well, I'm walking and talking with my mind stayed on the Spirit. I'm walking and talking with my mind stayed day long. All day long I keep my mind stayed on spirit. Well, all day long I keep my mind stayed on spirit. All day long I keep my mind stayed on spirit. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Now I'm going to change it for this last one. I'm going to wake up this moment. Not just this morning, but just wake up right now, right here, this moment. I wake up this moment with my mind stayed on spirit. Well, I wake up this moment with my mind stayed on spirit. I wake up this moment with my mind stayed on spirit. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Thank you for singing along. I can see you out there joining in. Take off all of my guitar encumbrances, and now you just have me. So, the monthly theme is pulled by vision. What does vision mean? We heard a little bit about visualization and vision. The process of visualization is a more conscious direction where we have something going on in our lives, and we want it to look different. So with the process of visualization, we are kind of taking the driver's seat, so to speak, and we are putting out into the universe what it is that we are wanting to come into our lives. So say we're working in a position and we'd like to have a raise, or we'd like to take on more responsibility, or we'd like to have less responsibility. We feel dumped on. With visualization, we envision, we imagine what it's like to be in that different space. We let ourselves see it, we let ourselves feel it, we let ourselves. It's almost like if you're making coffee, you don't just drink coffee beans. You let the water steep in the coffee mixture, and then you get coffee or tea. I really know nothing about coffee because I'm not a coffee drinker, but I know that most people are coffee drinkers. So, for me, if I'm making tea, I have the hot water and I steep the tea so that the leaves release their flavor. And visualization is like letting ourselves steep in what it is that we want. Now, when we say vision is a process where we're a little bit more receptive to what it is that creation itself might see for us. At the end of the reading, Reverend David Alexander spoke about not only what it is that we want out of life, which is that process of visualization. What is it that we want life to give us? But visioning and vision is what is it that life wants to express as us? How are we the places where life shows up? How are we that perfect spot, that perfect position, that perfect viewpoint for all of creation, for all of intelligence, for all of wisdom, that we are that place where wisdom, intelligence, peace, truth, light shows up. Now that may sound highfalutin, or it may sound like, what are you talking about? But the thing is that we have the opportunity, wherever we are, to be the presence of love. We have the opportunity to be the presence of compassion. We have the opportunity to be the presence of truth, of light. Perhaps just by asking a person in the grocery line, we get up and we're going to pay for our groceries. if we just sincerely ask, how's your day? How are you? Or alternatively, if we were to say, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing what you do so that I can take home what it is that I need. That moment by moment, we have the opportunity to be in the world differently. So that's a little bit about the notion of vision versus visualization. And it's a call. Visioning is a call from the universe itself that it holds something greater than we can even imagine. How many of us have let ourselves be in positions where we set a limit on what it is that we allow to imagine as possible? I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself. I have definitely put limits on myself. I have definitely said, I can only go this far. That's as far as I can get. How do I catch myself saying that and then saying, wait a second, that's not the truth? Or perhaps more accurately, it doesn't have to be the truth. I don't have to accept that. I don't have to embrace that. I don't have to claim that as the truth. And the wonderful thing is that if we catch ourselves, we can let it go. We can stop holding on so tightly to that thing that we name as truth. And we can embrace something differently. One of the things that happens with the series of talks, I said that there's a monthly theme of being pulled by vision. The monthly theme gets generated from within the organization that our center belongs to. We belong to an organization called Centers for Spiritual Living. And Centers for Spiritual Living was originally kind of in a way, not necessarily desired outcome of the work of a gentleman named Ernest Holmes. Now, Ernest Holmes started learning and reading about how spirit works, about how different religious traditions come together, can be put together, can stand side by side rather than in competition. And he started speaking. People heard him talk just in casual conversation, and they thought, hey, I'd really like to hear more. So he was invited to do a talk after dinner. And he never expected much to come out of it. It's not like he trained for this. It's not like it's something that he said. He didn't have a vision about this. But the fact was that the more he spoke, the more people came and wanted to listen. So he really formulated a spiritual movement kind of against his own will. That wasn't what he set out to do. How many of us have ever found ourselves getting carried away beyond what we may have initially thought we were called to do? And I'm hearing Reverend Michael, who did the reading, kind of chuckling at that. I remember as a little kid, maybe first, second grade, for some reason, I had 8th graders and 7th graders and 6th graders know who I was. And I had no idea how they knew who I was because they were being taught in a completely different part of the school. But I guess I wasn't a particularly small personality. I was somebody who was the first person to raise my hand, and if people, this is really dating me age-wise, but there was a show called Welcome Back, Kotter, and there was a character named Horshack, And he was like, Mr. Carter. I was that kind of kid. I know this, pick me. You need something, I'll do it. And I guess that made me more visible, and without the intention of being seen, without the intention of being known. Because I was a little bit afraid. Why is it that these older kids know who I am? And I was lucky. In Dr. Reverend David Alexander's reading, he spoke about having been raised in the teaching of science of mind and the Centers for Spiritual Living. He talked about having known that. I didn't have that experience. I was raised in the Roman Catholic faith tradition. And the Roman Catholic faith tradition was not something that definitely was about my inherent power, about about me being a place where God shows up, where Spirit shows up, where light shows up. There was much more of a differentiation. There was God, who, for lack of better formulation, kind of sat on a throne on a bunch of clouds, and he passed judgment, and he was like deciding you can come in and you not so much. And then the Catholic faith was also really big into Jesus, because Jesus was the Son of God. Somehow, miraculously, God had a son. And Jesus was, well, because he was God's son, he could do all sorts of stuff. He was just amazing. You know, blind people came to him and asked, please heal me. And he healed them. And there's all kinds of stories about it. Now, the fact was, actually, Jesus wasn't the first person with these kinds of miraculous healing. But as a Catholic, that wasn't what was really pressed about. Jesus was identified as very special. Now, Jesus came from the Israelites, from the Hebrew, from the Jewish tradition. And if anybody takes a moment to read the Torah, there are tons of prophets who were gifted and able to do all kinds of miraculous things. Now, while the Catholic Church kind of looked back at them and said, they prefigured Jesus. But Jesus was definitely better than any of them, according to the Catholic faith. And this argument about who's better has led to all kinds of prejudice and all kinds of unkindness. With the Centers for Spiritual Living, they've tried to grow past, we've tried to grow past that one-upsmanship. That my church is better than your church, my mom's better than your mom, my God's better than your God. We have this vision where we emphasize unity with Spirit and connection with each other. And that we have a world calling us individually and collectively to higher states of consciousness and action. Consciousness and action. Those two things together. I can't speak, to any of you, but I can speak to myself. Sometimes I act, and if my consciousness is out of sync with my actions, it's a train wreck. It's a train wreck for me. I work as a school psychologist, and one of the biggest things that I've learned over the past several years is the difference between intention and action. I've been part of training around racial justice and racial equity. And a huge point is to get over ourselves around our intention. Well, I didn't mean for that statement. I didn't intend for my statement to be offensive. And we want to give ourselves credit. We want to check the list and say, well, I didn't mean to be bad. I didn't mean, I really meant the best thing. But we have to be thinking about our impact, and that's our action. I didn't intend for my statement, my my blank overall statement about black people or Asian people, I didn't mean to be offensive. Merely by making a statement about a whole group of people in and of itself is offensive. And if I can't own that and hear about that, then I'm closed off from being able to engage appropriately. So the difference between intention and impact. An element that's really important in the Centers for Spiritual Living is that creation is an expression of one infinite reality. Creation is an expression of one infinite reality. This thing in front of me, this computer that is delivering this message, the Facebook which is recording this, is all part of one reality. And the reality is far bigger than any of us can even begin to imagine. Our tradition proposes that it is infinite. The other thing it asks us to experiment with is that it is inherently good. And it is always evolving to greater expressions of goodness. Greater expressions of goodness. That where we are now, right this moment, is always open to greater expressions of good. So when we become conscious and aware of the prospect that life is flowing through us, life is flowing through us. Wisdom is flowing through us. Truth is flowing through us. Light is flowing through us. The things that become possible are less fear, less striving, less attachment to outcomes. When we know that we are places through which good, love, life, wholeness. We are those places through which that which is greater than our individual selves is expressing. How much more becomes possible when we stop holding on to the vision that I am only this. I am only this. When we stop that and play with the idea, the teaching is called science of mind, and the notion with the science was experiment with it on. Experiment, try it on, see what happens. What's the worst thing that can happen by thinking, I am a place of power, I am a place of beauty, I am a place of light, I am a place of good? What's the worst thing that can happen? Oh, it didn't show up the way I expected. Years ago, I read a book by a group therapist, Yalom, and he talked about conducting therapy with this person. And at the time, he said, well, I knew that what I said made a difference because that person changed. Years later, he was doing a retrospective view on his work. And he went to that client and he said, didn't something different happen? And the client was like, yes, it did. But what he imagined had happened was completely different from what that client had experienced. And yes, it was transformative, but not in the way that he could hold in his mind. It was far bigger than what he thought. It made a difference for the client that was outside of his consciousness. He thought it was one thing, but it ended up being something totally different. And he kind of was a bit upset because he's like, well, I wanted her to have this outcome. He was attached to that particular outcome. My client will be successful when the client does this. And the client had... something that was completely not what he thought was happening. But the outcome was exactly what she desired. Sorry, I was trying to maintain a sense of anonymity about whether it was a whoever. But we may think that our impact on a person means one thing. We may find out sometime later that it wasn't what we thought. But what can happen is, if we can open ourselves to imagining just that there's a good out there, and that person ought to receive it, and let go of our naming that good. Now, that may sound simple. Yeah, I can be detached. I can be at ease, and I can flow with however good shows up. But let's be honest, how many of us do that? How many of us are like, oh, it's all good. I don't want to speak to any of you, but I know for myself that I can be really attached to how things are. So there are ways to use this teaching. There are ways to embody it. We have a person here at Northern Light Spiritual Center, a person called a practitioner, a religious science practitioner, and she is comparable to a deacon in other faiths. She's comparable to someone who's taken the extra training and gone the extra mile to really understand this teaching and then to convey that teaching. And she can use it in sessions with folks where it becomes a space to listen to what's going on for people, to ask them what it is that they're wanting to see, and to pray to bring about what it is that they're longing for. A term that we use for that is the kind of prayer we use is something called spiritual mind treatment. And with spiritual mind treatment, what you're doing is you're seeing the situation. You're imagining what's beyond that situation. What is it? What longing? What desire? What positive expression of the divine is trying to show up through this? And then rather than focusing on the current problem, we focus on the bloomed solution. How do we practice this for ourselves in our daily lives? I want to identify three processes. So the first one is that we are channels of good here on this planet, in this universe. We are channels of good. Life seeks to express itself through us. Truth seeks to express itself through us. Light, love, wholeness, beauty. And I'm saying all of these different things because each one of us may resonate to a different aspect of greatness, to a different aspect of presence, to a different aspect of wholeness. Imagine if we hold in mind that each of us are places through which greatness is longing to express. In the song that I had people sing, our minds are stayed on spirit. Our minds, we woke up this morning with our minds stayed on spirit. How easy is it to wake up and have our mind set on something else. Oh my God, I've got this and this and this and this and this and this and this to do. Oh my God, I should be this and this and this and this and this, but I'm not that yet. Oh my God, I shouldn't be this, 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 and this, and this. All of those things that come to mind through a process that we've stepped into over years. For me, the notion of waking up with my mind stayed on spirit was in alignment with what I was raised with as a Roman Catholic. I was diagnosed with diabetes at the age of 7, and I would get a shot every morning, and I would either have my mother or my grandmother or my dad give me my shot before I was competent to do it. You know, because there aren't a lot of little kids that are like, "Oh, I'm going to get to give myself a shot. That is just the coolest thing ever." I think it was about 2.5 years before I was like, I'm going to do this myself. And that's cool to be independent like that. But it took me 2.5 years. And there were different levels of expertise. My grandmother, my mom's mom, had been a nurse, so she was great. She could give a shot. She could do it in my leg. She could do it in my arm. She could do it in my back end. She was just, very skilled. Now, my mom was well-intended, but her actions were not so skilled because she was so nervous about it. She was so nervous that she was going to hurt me that, in fact, her fear was exactly what happened. Every time she gave me a shot, it hurt like heck because she was just like, ah, ah, ah. My dad overcame that because he would usually smack me first, and the pain from the smack completely overcame the pain from the shot. So in terms of my preference among all of those 3 options, Nana the expert, my mom the fearful shot giver, or my dad who would smack me first before my shot, I really hoped that Nana would be up when it was time for my shot. Now, I didn't know enough about the power of my mind, or I didn't know enough about personal assertion. The people who do it best is Nana. And I'd really like Nana to take care of this. I say this because if we are channels for good, sometimes it's about discovering how it is we get to be the good. Sometimes it's recognizing what's going on. And it's seeing what will guide us through that situation. Ernest Holmes wrote in this thing called life, "We are in water of infinite life, as the fish is in the ocean." The spirit of life is all around us. It flows through us. It permeates everything. So, with this first point about being a channel of good, I've got some life work or homework as our practitioner establishes for people. So the homework is to focus on that line, I wake up each moment, my mind stayed on spirit. I wake up each moment, my mind stayed on spirit. And I'll come back to this at the end, but I'm just inviting us to use that as a reminder, as a guide, that we are channels of beauty, peace, good, wholeness. I wake up each moment, my mind stayed on spirit. Now, the second thing to be thinking about is that conditions change. Circumstances change. Are things this morning exactly the way they were yesterday? Very few people can say that they are exactly the same. And yet we can spend a lot of energy and time trying to make them the same. We can get very boxed in by wanting things to remain a certain way. A teaching in the Science of Mind tradition, a teaching from the Centers for Spiritual Living is that spirit is our source. You can call it spirit, you can call it light, you can call it life, you can call it love, you can call it wholeness, you can call it beauty, you can call it peace, you can call it efficiency. I always love that one, efficiency. It can be ease, it can be grace. No matter how compelling the facts, we know that divinity within us creates matter and circumstances. Divinity within us is creating matter and circumstances. Matter is always changing, but there is something steady behind that matter. There is some permanently giving life. There is some permanently giving expression. But how often do we get focused on hard, cold facts? And we're like, these cannot be changed. Again, one of the things that Ernest Holmes said is, you are as free as your thought. You never deal with conditions, you deal with mind. And he wrote this in Ideas of Power. You never deal with conditions, you deal with mind. Because as soon as we fall susceptible to conditions and to circumstances, as soon as we let those overwhelm us, we can get lost. So the antidote, the homework for that is, I wake up, my mind stayed on unchanging spirit. I take my attention and I decide where I'm going to put it. I wake up, my mind stayed on unchanging spirit. This week at the center, once a month we show movies here. And we showed Harriet, the story about Harriet Tubman. In the movie, Harriet Tubman is presented as somebody who stood in the face of conditions and did not ever let herself be trapped by those conditions. She was enslaved. Her mother was enslaved. The enslaver had promised that upon her mother's 45th birthday, that her mother and her daughters would be freed. But by the age of 47, the promise of that enslaver was ignored. And rather than stick with that, because Harriet had asked for that promise to be fulfilled, they thought she was a troublemaker. And their plan for dealing with a troublemaker was to sell her further south. And rather than face that, she ran away. And it was remarkable. When she got to Philadelphia where she could be free, they said, this just doesn't happen. Who helped you? And she's like, I did it. I did it. I followed where the Lord called me. Harriet had gotten a blow to the head. She literally had a mark in her forehead from this blow. And when she talked about her experience, the person who was taking her story believed that what was going on for her was brain damage. What Harriet experienced was a greater capacity to connect with the divine. She had described how the voice of the divine became more clear to her after that moment in time. What if we let our circumstances and conditions act for us the way that the story of Harriet Tubman acted for her? What if we let our suffering, our pain, open us up rather than shut us down? Okay, many of us have been taught to believe in the power of the situation. But we can change our belief to this. Our belief from this to this. The divine is only and always good. The divine is only and always good. Michael Bernard Beckwith described, as long as you are on this planet, you are here to deliver your gifts, your talents, your skills, with confidence and inner authority, withholding nothing. We can continue to find ourselves believing in the power of the situation. We can continue to wring our hands and feel hopeless, or we can catch ourselves doing that. Notice our hands together being wrung. Do we have the opportunity to choose? This circumstance is a way that spirit within me has an opportunity for greater expression. I'm going to let this be a place through which spirit has greater expression. George Floyd was murdered. The outcome of a court case formally acknowledged that. His murderer is going to prison. Now, going to prison does not restore George Floyd's life. However, George Floyd's life, Breonna Taylor's life, ignited the United States and many places around the world to a greater openness and understanding that justice is possible. We can stand and say, I hold in the possibility of justice. I stand for justice. I stand for truth. I stand for that little girl that made that video. I stand for the people of courage. I stand for the people of power. I stand for the people who are stepped on and walked over. I stand for a divine power rather than a power of circumstances that have just gone on and on and on. So, we can remember that Spirit is expressing ourselves, itself, as us right now, right here. And that this is happening powerfully and in innovative ways. We have the opportunity to listen to divine spirit within us. And we have the opportunity to keep on keeping on. no matter how compelling the circumstances. We have the opportunity to shift our focus. Now is a time for us to listen to the voice of our visions. The visions that come to us from life itself. I would say keep visioning, keep visualizing the possibility, but also be on the lookout. Be present to a vision that asserts itself to us from life. It's like, where did that come from? When we're asking, where did that come from? I propose a science experiment. It came from life itself. It wants us to stay our mind on spirit. So I've got 3 proposals, 3 homeworks for us. I wake up each moment, my mind stayed on spirit. I wake up each moment, my mind stayed on spirit. 2, I wake up, my mind stayed on unchanging spirit. That spirit is always this consistency of love, of life, of beauty. And how it manifests is infinite. What each of us sees as beautiful, what each of us sees as powerful, is as diverse as each of us are. And then, the last homework is, I wake up choosing to keep my mind stayed on spirit. I choose to keep my mind stayed on spirit. So that means we're like, oh my gosh, I should have been focused on spirit. It means that we still have time. We can come back, we can choose that. We don't have to be like all pitiful about, oh my gosh, I lost sight. I forgot that spirit is present. I forgot that I could stay open to it. That we have any moment, every moment, the opportunity to refocus and keep our mind stayed on spirit. And so it is.
Thank you, Reverend Vaughan, for a inspiring and powerful and awakening talk. I want to thank everybody who's joined us today on either Facebook or Zoom, or whoever watches this later on YouTube. And if anybody cares to support us financially, you can do that by going to our website, which is northernlightspiritualcenter.com, and there's a donate button there. And also, I just want to thank anyone and everyone who has supported us in any way. Support us with your thoughts, your prayers, your support, your financial support, any way that you have supported this community. We are eternally grateful for that. And in that, I know that there is only one life, one love, one power. And I know that life, that love, and that power is God. And in knowing that that is God, that is also within me, I am that life, I am that love, I am that power. Each one of us are that life, that love, that power that God is. As in the reading today, I am, because God is. And so in that, knowing that there is only one life, and that that life is love, life, and power, I state these truths that anyone and everyone that is seeking something new, a new job, a new home, a new relationship, that it is so. And that the health and wholeness is each of ours. And that that peace and that love that we so crave is also ours. And I give thanks for the divine presence in each of us, that shows up in each of us, that expresses in each of us. I'm grateful that there is that life, that love, and that power that is God, that is me, that is you, that is us. And so I release this into the automatic action of the law. For the law takes this, it shapes it, it forms it, and it sets it into motion. I plant the seed. I don't dig it up. I allow the law to do its job. And so it is.